Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Spectrum podcast. I am Jason Romano. Thanks for joining us here on the program today. Our episode is sponsored by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. This is a chance for you and I to make a difference in a child's life by sponsoring them through Compassion. For more information, go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum and consider releasing a child from poverty today. Really excited to be joined on the podcast today by Denver Broncos safety Justin Simmons. And man, it's crazy to think now that football is on the horizon, just a couple months away from the start of the 2019 NFL season. Justin played his college ball at Boston College and was selected in the third round of the 2016 NFL draft by the Broncos, number 98 overall. In 2018, he had a career season, 97 tackles, 3 interceptions, and started all 16 games. In high school, he was All-Area Defensive Player of the Year at Martin County High School in Stuart, Florida. He was also named second team All-Florida for that high school year. And Justin, listen, this was a fun podcast, talking to him about his journey and his faith. And I really enjoyed getting to know Justin Simmons, and I think you'll enjoy getting to know him as well. Take a listen. Justin Simmons, Denver Broncos safety, joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Justin, welcome to the podcast. We're taping this in the offseason, of course, here, and it's a few months away still from the 2019 opener. It's Monday Night Football against the rival Oakland Raiders. We now know that. That's exciting. And it's been an offseason of change and turnover with the Broncos, just as well as really any team in the league. But I wonder for you, as you head into your fourth NFL season, the big differences maybe that you've seen in your preparation, not just for a game, but really in the offseason, which is vital to get your body ready and going for the season. But what the biggest differences are for you, the way that you prepare now as opposed to maybe when you first came into the league?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, looking at it each and every year, there's always been something that, I've taken away that's been a little bit, different in terms of my offseason preparation. But I think the underlining, factor that was consistent throughout each and every year, now going into my fourth year was how important and how big of an emphasis it is to put recovery, and on your body. And I think, the biggest thing in that is it doesn't necessarily also have to mean, working out, getting your body, obviously working out, getting your body in the best physical shape is huge, and it's super relative, but also, making sure that you're not working your body too hard so that you're not ready for the longevity of the season, because that's what it really comes about, making sure that you're available. And so that's been the biggest thing, learning from asking vets, asking guys that have been in the league, 10 plus years, 8 plus years, what they've done to stick around. That's been the biggest thing is, making sure that your body is, you're taking care of your body in the off season. And so that's been my thing that I've been learning.
When you come off of a season like 2018, for you personally, it was your best year from a statistical standpoint. You started all 16 games, 97 tackles, 3 picks, but the team didn't do as well as obviously you would have liked. So how do you navigate both getting better as a player, but ultimately wanting the team to succeed, of course, because that's really what everybody plays for?
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I think, last year from a statistical standpoint, obviously that has been, the best season that I personally had, but, I didn't hit a lot of the goals that I wanted to hit. And I know obviously the team, as a whole didn't hit a lot of the goals that they wanted to hit. And so, I think, the biggest thing going in is, we're all looking for improvement, right? Myself included, going into my contract year and obviously as a team, but, if I could put any emphasis on how I'd love the season to go, obviously you need great safety play to, in order to be a successful team. But, I just hope we do, well enough. So we hit the postseason, and I don't care what that looks like. If that means, sacrificing some things here and there, I just want to be able, to prolong our season into the postseason. And I think that's how a lot of guys feel. And so I'm just really looking forward to this year. And, with the new staff that we have coming over from Chicago and things like that, I'm just really looking forward to a great season.
Justin Simmons is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. When you came into the league compared to where you are now, what was your biggest adjustment when you came to the NFL as a player? You played, in college at Boston College and then came to the Broncos. What was an adjustment for you that when you arrived, you were like, oh, this is a different beast than what it was like in college?
Yeah, I think that's another good question, because I don't know if there's any really true one answer I could give. I think the biggest thing was, how the transition of how to handle yourself like a pro. And I thought Boston College did a great job of prepping me for that, but it's just a different animal when you're actually in the mix of it. So, you go back and, I know a lot of people, wouldn't know unless you've been through the process, but, that rookie year is a long transition, and it's a lot of growth, and, it's a lot of stick to itness, throughout that season. There's a lot of things being thrown at you, and it's honestly a full year of complete football. And so, that's really where you learn how to, be a pro, because you got to do things that you don't want to do. You got to show up to events that you don't want to show up to. You're a rookie, so you got to show up earlier and stay later. Yeah. And you got to do extra meetings, that the NFL provides for you in terms of like financial advising and, different, other different things that are happening around the NFL that they're trying to make sure that, we're aware of, situations we're aware of. So it's a lot going on. And honestly, with all that being said, it just accumulates to, being a pro, being a good pro at that, and how to handle that. So that was the biggest thing for me.
Do you have a welcome to the NFL moment that you maybe on the field and you were like, oh, okay, yep, I'm here now, whether it was good or bad? Was there that welcome to the league moment for you?
Oh yeah, I've had, I think the biggest welcome to the NFL moment for me was, my first year, and this is a couple games into the season, and, we're playing the New England Patriots, and, leading up to it, obviously, questions are being bounced around in the locker room for, some of the defensive rookies. Like, you're going up against Tom Brady. I'm sure you've watched him, for most of your life. And, what's that going to be like going out there and competing and playing against him? And, you give the media response. You give the response of, oh, it's obviously going to be crazy, surreal going out there and playing against Tom Brady, someone that you've always watched growing up, but we got a job to do. We know what job has to be done. You give that type of response, but
right.
when I was actually on there on the field, the first play of the series, I can remember we brought in our sub package where pretty much I was like the third safety that came in, and a lot of our coverage, that year was just based off of safety, disguises and making sure that we messed with the quarterback so he didn't have great reads. And long story short, I mean, Tom Brady just called out every single. I felt like I moved my foot 1 inch, and this guy was calling out like exactly what defense we were in and making the right offensive adjustments to put them in exactly the play they needed to beat us. And so it just shows you, man, like that's the level of excellence. You gotta make sure you're ready with year in and year out.
That's such a great story. I wonder, too, for you, as you got back to your younger days, was football always something that you gravitated to? Was that your number one sport as a kid as you were growing up in Florida?
Yeah, I mean, football was always a sport that I loved to compete in. I think it was the sport that I was most natural at as well. But the number one sport that I loved when I was growing up was basketball. And then, once I realized that I was going to be a 6'3", center in high school, that basketball dream quickly went down the drain, and we just had to stick with football. But like I said,
who was your guy in basketball? Like when you were growing up?
Growing up, I just loved watching Kobe play. Okay. I was a big Kobe fan. And I think as of recent, kind of transitioning, that Kobe and D Wade, kind of duo. And I know D Wade is not that far removed from Kobe, but regardless, like those two, watching him grow up, and then obviously D Wade playing most of his career in Miami, and me being from South Florida, that was really cool.
Now, we know, obviously, if you're on this podcast, that you have a faith. Your faith in Christ is something that you don't hide away from. It's very important to you. Tell us about where that became real to you when you started walking with the Lord.
Yeah, my walk with the Lord has been an amazing journey. I think, one of the things that I love about my sport is, the platform that comes with it. And, the bigger the platform, the more people I'm able to touch with just the truth of the gospel and just my relationship with the Lord. And I think, that's the biggest thing that I'm thankful for. And I grew up in a Christian household, and, with that came a lot of wrong understanding in terms of finding myself and finding my own personal relationship, with Christ. And I had my identity wrapped up in all, totally different things. And basically I was like a lukewarm Christian. I was a guy that was out there, preaching the word or, quote unquote, living the life, just on Sunday, but then, Monday through Saturday, I'm out doing, whatever it is that I want to do, and behind closed doors. And so, it was actually through, a relationship with my wife that, I met her in high school that really helped me, catapult me into a true relationship with Christ. And, she helped me find myself, and, she helped me find myself in my relationship with Christ. And it was just such a healthy experience for me. And, it was awesome, and so I never shy away, like you said, from sharing stuff like that, because I know Christ saved me from myself, and I love to share that with different people, because you never know at different walks, where people are with their walk, in their faith.
Yeah. And you mentioned your platform too, and just being intentional about using your platform. But as that became larger for you, when you're excelling at Boston College and people are starting to take notice, and then you make it to the NFL, can you share with us a little bit of maybe what you've gone through and just seen others gone through in that wrestle, especially other believers who are in the league, that so many athletes have, wrestling between identity in being a pro athlete and identity in Christ? Can you talk a little bit about that and that wrestle and that tension that exists for a lot of us?
Oh yeah, it's so hard. I mean, and even in explaining it, and explaining it well and explaining it to a point where people understand, there's still that battle. That's how tough it is. You understand it, in its entirety, and you still struggle with it. And so, looking at it, I mean, we're in a business where it's, what have you done for me lately? And if you haven't, no matter what your contract says, no matter how many years it says you're under contract, you're always liable to get traded, cut, replaced. And so each and every year you come in, you're fighting for your job, and, a couple of bad games stacked on top of each other, really start to bring in, that voice of, basically of lack of confidence, and, that starts to creep in. And then, when that creeps in, it goes into different areas of your life, and, it starts affecting, how you treat, relationships with, your wife or your teammates or coaches or, family members. And so, there's a lot of pressure, on athletes, and especially pro athletes, year in and year out. And so, anytime I get asked a question like, how is it playing in front of all those people? And, I know it's mentally frustrating to be able to, hold your composure year in and year out. And I tell people, I don't know how guys do it without a relationship, with the Lord. Cause I struggle, and I don't even find my worth in what my coaches say, what my teammates say, what fans say. I find my worth in what Christ and who Christ says I am. And I still struggle with that from time to time. And I still have to have, people pour into me, kind of like my group of, my group of believers that pour into me and help me through that. And I still struggle with that. And so it's a super tough, topic to deal with, because like I said, you can explain it to a T and you still struggle with it. And it's just something that you always have to be constantly aware of.
As an NFL player, obviously on Sundays during the season, it's very difficult to be a part of a church community or go to church. I wonder for you, this is sort of a two-parter. First, during the season, share with our audience how you stay fed with your faith and how you stay fed in the Lord. And then in the off season, this is part two, how, are you a part of a church community? Are you able to become a part of a church community, or is it really hard because you're, going through still OTAs and mini camps? So share a little bit with us what that looks like for you, maybe during the season and in the off season.
Yeah, it could be challenging at times, and I think it's more challenging when you're in a new environment and you're trying to feel things out, because we all come from, like you come from a church background where you're used to a certain type of service and,
sure,
worship and praise and things of that nature. And so, you just get comfortable with being in the environment you're used to. It's tough to kind of find that, places elsewhere in different cities. And so, like in season, obviously there's, you have no time at all to go to a traditional church on a Sunday morning. But, there are some churches, at least, around here in Denver that we found that my wife and I absolutely love, that do have Saturday services. And, sometimes you do have a time slot, on a Saturday before you have to check into a hotel if you're at a home game. So for eight Saturdays throughout the year while you're at home, there is a little time slot where you're able to have some time to yourself on a Saturday afternoon. And there are churches that do Saturday services. And then, pushing forward, earlier on or later that week, going into like the Mondays and Wednesdays, we'll have our team chaplain, Reza Zadeh will have Bible studies and things like that, laid out for us. And, we'll do some in the morning, we'll do some later in the evening, and then we'll even do like couple studies, for those that are married or have girlfriends or fiancés or anything like that. We'll do couple studies like, once a month, just to get together and as a group talk about how we're doing. And I think that's also really cool, because even the wives, man, they don't have any time, for themselves, especially if those families have children, and it's tough. And so, doing those groups like that are really helpful. And, moving on to the off season, it really all depends. For my family, we have a 1-year-old daughter. And so, we're going to start being a little bit more stationary, but, typically in our past off seasons, we've gone back to South Florida and, had the opportunity to hang out with friends and family. And, when we go back, obviously in the off season to South Florida, we attend the church that both my wife and I grew up going to, which is, really nice. And it's a, kind of a refresher to go back and see familiar faces and get back into the routine you're used to. But while you're out here in the off season, you have OTAs and things like that. And so when you got to come back for OTAs and stuff, it's actually a lot less hectic, obviously, in the off season. And so it's nice because you do have your Sundays, right? So you're able to go to church on Sundays. You have more time, you have more of your day throughout the weeks, because you're typically, in the facility until around, like 12 or 1. And so, you have more time to yourself. You have more time for Bible studies, for the guys that are around, and, for the wives that are around, we're able to do Bible studies with the team chaplains and stuff like that and get together. And so, it's actually really nice. So like the off season, obviously in season, is where the money is made in terms of playing football. And obviously, that's the best part of the job. But off season, spiritually is the biggest, is the biggest time to kind of like grow in your faith. And, I love every minute of that too.
You mentioned, you're married. In the past few years, you've gotten married. You have a 1-year-old, a beautiful little girl. If you follow you on Instagram, you see lots of pictures of her on there. What's life been like for you these last few years, changing from just Justin Simmons to now married, husband, and especially daddy? Because I know what that's like, having a little girl, and that's just an amazing thing. What's life been like in that world, adjusting to not just being about you anymore, but you having the responsibility to take care of your wife and certainly your daughter?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable in a good way. I read all these books, leading up. I did all these classes leading up until I had our daughter, until we had Lainey. And, I thought like I couldn't be more prepared than I am right now. And I was saying that, in the delivery room, pretty much like hours before, Lainey was going to be delivered. And then, the first time I held her, I realized like I forgot every single word I read in all those books. I forgot every single lesson that was taught in any of the classes that I went to. And I'm just sitting here holding my daughter, and I'm just like, Man, I know. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like I'm not ready.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I felt kind of like, as I was holding Laney, I felt like, God was looking down and kind of holding both of us and saying like, this is just another step, and I'm here with you every step of the way. With this as well. And as comforting as that felt, it was also a huge sense of responsibility. Like, and I don't want to get, obviously like, too deep, and I don't want to into it, but
Yeah.
you just think about like how society is today and how the world is and all these things that are happening that are so sad around the world.
Yeah.
And it's I'm holding my daughter, and I'm just like, I don't know how to be a great dad to raise you in such like a broken time, I feel like. And it's it's a constant thing that my wife and I talk about all the time, and being intentional and just trying our best and praying through it, talking to other couples that have obviously have a couple children, and things that they've done, things that they found successful, and so it's a huge responsibility, and I'm thankful for every step of the way that we've had this past year with her. And I'm excited for the future things that are to come, but it's it's awesome. It is amazing, and I'm super thankful for the family that I have, and they're great. It's just also that responsibility factor, and
Oh yeah.
you could I feel the weight of that sometimes too, as every dad and mom does. But yeah, so
Are you a diaper changer?
I would be lying if I said I was, and I know my wife would hear this podcast and be like, Justin, I know you did not just lie in front of all those people. So I probably changed like one diaper to my wife, like 3 or 4 diapers. That's about that's about how that goes. She's definitely the expert, and I'm kind of like, I start and I say I need help midway through and all that good stuff.
Just be there behind her and say, whatever you need, honey, whatever you need. That's the lesson I can tell every person, right?
I'm really good at that. I'm really good at that one. My wife can vouch for me on that one.
Well, then you'll have a long and prosperous marriage, my friend. I promise you that. Last couple of questions here with Justin Simmons on the podcast. I like to ask these as sort of generic questions, just because I'm fascinated by the answers from the different athletes and people that we talk to. What is your definition of success, Justin? And now that you've been in the league 4 years, you're a believer, obviously, married, have a child. What's your definition of success?
Oh, that is a really good question. Honestly, my definition of success is not what you have done, and not the legacy that you're leaving on in your respective field, but the person that you are and the legacy that you're leaving imprinted on people on a personal level. And so I never like to deem success as like how much money you make, or all the accolades that you've achieved in your respective sport or field of whatever it is that you're pursuing in your professional world. But just your interactions with people and the imprint you're leaving on people. And the bottom line is, when people are meeting you, like, are they talking about you as a person, or are they talking about you as the football player, or you as like the doctor, or whatever the case may be. But
yeah,
long story short, like, just leaving an impression that's bigger than the job that you have, or that that you do, because that is, at the end of the day, what all it is a job is something you do. It's not who you are.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're successful because you're really good at something that you do. I consider you to be a successful person by the impact that you left with people, with communities, with, families, as who you are as a person. And I think that's the biggest thing. So
it's good.
I guess that's kind of a long answer for that question.
No, there's no wrong answer. That's the great thing about it. It's whatever you think it is. But last question, and we like to ask this to all of our guests, Justin. What are you learning from God right now? What is the Lord teaching you in the season of life that he has you in right now?
Yeah, the Lord is definitely, I feel like he's speaking heavily to me right now. And, talking with my wife, and, we're talking through a few things, talking with my team chaplain, a great group of, I have a great support group back at home in South Florida that I talk to on the regular. And basically it's summed up into, not getting wrapped up in, this season and, trying to do everything that I can, and trying to, find ways of comfort in my sport. And I think, I say all that because this is my contract year coming up.
Yeah.
And obviously, in your contract year, if you have a good year, you're liable to have bigger contracts and this, that, and the other. And so it's so easy to just get caught up in doing that. And in doing that, I could be missing out on the little things, here and there with, spending time with my wife or my daughter, or, just little things like that. And it could just be like 5 minutes at a time each day, but then those eventually add up. And, just little things like that, or, pushing my quiet time with the Lord aside just to, do some football specific things, which, I never want to shy away from doing stuff like that. And so, I feel like the Lord is really speaking to me and just saying, I pretty much we've been step by step together, and I've never left your side, through everything that you've gone through. And yet we're here at this point, don't doubt me, I have your back, and it's going to be greater than anything that you've expected. And that doesn't mean, and I like for that to mean yes, that means, I'm going to have a great year and it's going to be a great contract. And that could just not be his plan for my life. And I just want to make sure, in talking with all these people I'm talking about, that I'm just settled and comforted in, the Lord's plan for my life, and whatever that may look like.
Mm. He is Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos, safety, and excited to watch what transpires in 2019 for you, my friend. And we just appreciate you joining us here on the podcast, and let's catch up again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jason, again for having me. I really appreciate it.
And many thanks to Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos for joining us here on Sports Spectrum. You can give Justin a follow on Twitter at jsims1119, at JSIMMS1119. Certainly just look up Justin Simmons and you'll find him there. His bio says he's an imperfect and unworthy follower of Jesus, saved by grace, hashtag Team Jesus. And I really enjoyed talking to Justin about his faith and about his journey. He's in a contract year, and if you know sports, you know how important that contract year is. At 25 years old, soon to be 26 years old for Justin. He's been a really good player for the Broncos in their secondary, and certainly looking to make 2019 his best season, and then see what the Lord has in store for him going into next year in 2020. Thanks to Justin for joining us here on the podcast. Thanks to you for listening. You can find us on social media at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handle is at sports_spectrum. If this is the first time that you've listened to this podcast, welcome. We're so grateful to have you here checking us out at Sports Spectrum. Do us a favor, whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We've had tons and tons of interviews here on this podcast with many different types of people, many different players, athletes, analysts, reporters, you name it, coaches. We've had them all here, pastors, and it's been wonderful to talk to all of them about the intersection of sports and faith. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. Also want you to check out our website, sportspectrum.com, where there's content every single day, including a daily devotional at 6 a.m. And this podcast is posted every day on our website, as well as articles on the intersection of sports and faith posted all day long, telling those stories, those impactful, important, powerful stories of how Jesus is working in the lives of people in the sports world. We're proud, we're privileged, we're honored to be able to do that. We want to encourage you to check it out, sportspectrum.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast, and thanks to our sponsors, Compassion International. For more information on how you can release a child from poverty, check out compassion.com/sportspectrum. Compassion.com/sportspectrum, and consider sponsoring a child today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode. Love you guys. Have a great rest of your day. This is the Sports Spectrum Podcast.